Hello, Beaverton High School families. This video is a recap of the presentation shared with the seniors in the class of 2025 during Beaver Lodge on Monday, December 16th, 2024. I always like to start off describing the different types of financial aid and our role as your counselors in your college and career center in helping you find different sources of financial aid. So first off, we've got really four types of financial aid: grants, scholarships, work study, and loans. And we consider grants and scholarships to be gift aid. And gift aid is just when someone gives you money to go to college and there aren't any strings attached other than attending your classes and passing them. Self-help aid, which is work study and student loans, are when someone gives you money to go to college, but there is a string attached. You might have to work a job if it's work study, or you'll have to pay a loan back if it's a student loan. Overall, financial aid is defined as any time someone other than a family member gives you money to go to college. As we talk about the different types of financial aid in the next few slides, I'll try to make a really clear distinction whether or not a type of financial aid is based on need, which we will calculate based on the information the family puts on the financial aid application, or on merit. And merit is the fact that there's something about you, some piece of your identity or your plans or what you've accomplished in the past that is attractive to a financial aid donor. When the financial aid office at different colleges and universities are putting together financial aid offers, we first, before we do anything else, look to see if the student is eligible for grants from the U.S. Department of Education or federal grants. The first federal grant, and the most common type, is the federal Pell Grant. Pell Grants are wonderful in that they are assigned to the student, so that Pell eligibility and the amount of that Pell Grant are really a function of the student. So once a student completes their financial aid application, they will receive a message that says, hey, it looks like you are eligible for a federal Pell Grant. And they will be eligible for that federal Pell Grant as long as they are in a financial aid eligible program of study for enough credit hours at any participating college or university. So Pell Grants we like just because they're portable and they're easy to explain. The next type of federal grant is also based on financial need, and this is the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, or FSEOG. SEOG is a little bit backwards from the Pell Grant. Instead of the money following the student, the funds are assigned to the college or university, and then they are asked to distribute those funds as they see best fit to their neediest students first. So often that is defined as Pell Grant students. The maximum amount of an FSEOG is $4,000 each year. Now you could apply to 3 different schools and receive a $4,000 SEOG at school A, maybe a $2,000 FSEOG at school B, and maybe not receive FSEOG at all at school C. So it's very, very dependent on the amount of funding that a school receives and the number of needy students at that school. And lastly, I've included the TEACH grant. This is an example of a federal grant that's actually merit-based. And the merit in this instance is that the student wishes to become a K-12 teacher after they leave school. So the TEACH grant gives students approximately $4,000 a year, and in return, they agree to teach for at least 4 out of the first 8 years after they leave school. Because students change majors often, and because this grant turns into a loan if the student does not teach, you will not see a TEACH grant usually in the first few years that you're in a college program, even if you come in as a first-year student and declare an education major. We want to make sure that you're really committed to that profession before we give you this grant, so that in case you change your mind, you are not saddled with an unexpected loan. So 3 federal grants, 2 based on need, and 1 based on merit. Now, I've been working in the financial aid field since 1989, and until the 2024 for 2025 school year, which is the current academic year that we're in, when families asked me, well, Jen, am I going to get a Pell Grant? I really couldn't tell them because we had to go through an entire calculation process. One of the nice things about FAFSA simplification is that it really made this an easy question to answer. So I have two charts here. This chart shows eligibility for students who are in a single parent family. This chart is for the 2025-26 school year, and we are looking back at the 2023 federal income tax return. Now I'm going to go to the next slide before I explain how to use this, so that we have plenty of time for you to see the figures on both sides. This is the Pell Grant eligibility chart for a student in a two-parent family for the 2025-2026 school year. The green chart I just showed you was for a single-parent family. And the way to read these charts is to find the family size in the left-hand column. So in this instance, the smallest family size we can have is 3, 2 parents and 1 student. If the combined parent income in 2023 was less than $43,505 with a family size of 3, then this particular student would be eligible for the maximum federal Pell Grant, which is currently $7,395 for a student attending full-time full year. If the parents combined made more than $68,365, the student would not be Pell eligible. And if the parents made between, that maximum Pell eligibility and that not Pell eligible column, the student might be eligible for a federal Pell Grant, but I can't tell you the exact amount without going through some very serious calculations. And this is why we have the financial aid office. They do a lot of behind the scenes type of work for us, and calculating Pell Grants is one of them. In addition to federal grants, we also have grants available from the state of Oregon for Oregon students who are graduating from Oregon high schools and who are going on to attend colleges and universities in Oregon. That's a lot of Oregon. In order to be eligible for the Oregon Opportunity Grant, which is the largest need-based grant program here in our state, the student would need to fill in a financial aid application. And we'll talk about the difference between the FAFSA and the ORSA in the next section. Based on the information on that financial aid application, the state of Oregon will determine if the student has enough financial need to qualify for the Oregon Opportunity Grant. If they do, they need to enroll for at least half-time each term or semester at an Oregon college or university based here in Oregon. So there's no separate application for this Oregon Opportunity Grant. It will just be part of the student's financial aid offer if they are eligible. In contrast, the Oregon Promise Grant does have a separate application. So first, the student will complete a FAFSA or an ORSA, so a financial aid application. Then they will complete a separate Oregon Promise Grant application, which is currently about 4 questions once you complete that username and password. In order to qualify for the Oregon Promise Grant, the student will need to either be a recent graduate from an Oregon high school with at least a 2.0 GPA, or somebody who has recently passed their GED exams. That passing GED score is considered the equivalent of a 2.0 or higher. The way the Oregon Promise Grant works is that any of our 2-year public colleges, so what we call community colleges here in Oregon, across the whole state, you do not have to stay at the community college in your community, and you can receive Oregon Promise Grant funding for any program, degree, certificate that is eligible for financial aid. So for example, you can use your Oregon Promise Grant to get a head start on the first 2 years of a 4-year college degree, or you could use your Oregon Promise Grant to complete a 2-year associate's degree, such as, this is my favorite, the massage therapy degree at Central Oregon Community College. Or you could use your Oregon Promise Grant to receive funding towards a certificate. And that might be something like computer information systems. It could be something like machine manufacturing. As long as that program of study is eligible to receive financial aid, you can use your Oregon Promise Grant to pay for it. Now, the Oregon Promise Grant application is currently open. So if you are in the class of 2025, I'd really encourage you to fill in the paperwork. Even if your plans don't currently include attending an Oregon community college at the moment, I would really like to have you complete the application. Every year, about July or August, once the Promise Grant application has closed, I end up working with students who didn't complete the application, whose plans have changed, and who really, really wish they had gone through the process of completing the application. If you don't apply for the Oregon Promise Grant in your senior year of high school, you are simply not going to be eligible for it, period. In addition to grant funding from the federal government or the state government, your colleges and universities have their own funds to hand out to you. And if you remember back when you were first or second year in high school, we would say search for colleges and don't worry yet about how much it's going to cost. Because a lot of those private independent colleges have a significant cost of attendance. And the reason we say that is because those private independent colleges also have significant amounts of institutional grants and scholarships to give you. You won't know how much you'll be receiving until you receive that original financial aid offer. But just know that private and independent colleges have funding, and our public colleges and universities have funding as well, usually through their foundation scholarships. So what you want to do is to very carefully check the website of the colleges and universities you're applying to and make sure that you're doing all that you can to apply for their grants and scholarships. Now remember, scholarships are gift aid. This is when someone gives you money to go to school because there's something about your identity or your future plans or your past accomplishments that really resonates with them. And what you want to do when you're applying for scholarships is to be the big fish in the small pond. You want to first start with scholarships where it's a limited number of people who can apply. So this would be those scholarships that are limited to just Beaverton High School students. And since Beaverton High School is the oldest high school in Oregon, you have more scholarships to choose from than students who are in newer high schools. You've got generations of past Beaverton High School students supporting you. You also want to look in your local community, look to see what's there for students who live in Beaverton or who are in the Beaverton School District or in Washington County. And then we'll kind of branch out to state and national organizations. The biggest source of scholarships for most of us is going to be those that come from the college or university that we are attending. So again, be very careful to pay attention to your scholarship eligibility as you're applying to colleges and universities. Now, back in the day when your parents were in high school and they walked uphill in the snow both ways to get to school, in order to search for scholarships, they had to go to the library and check out these thick books and flip through them to try to find scholarships. Luckily, those days are gone, and now you have the power of the internet at your fingertips. So on this page, what we have is a list of different scholarship websites that can help you in your search. You won't have to look at all of them, but you will find that one or two of these will really resonate with their user interface and how they give you your results more than other websites will. So what you'll do for each of these is you'll first go in and you'll create a profile. And on that profile, you are going to check every box and hit every blank that you can and really describe, again, your past accomplishments, your current identity, and your future plans. And once you've done that, the website will come back with a list of scholarships, and you're going to look through that list, and you're going to say, oh, yes, this one is perfect. You're going to save it or heart it or check it. And then you'll look and say, ooh, this one really missed the mark. And you're going to say, I don't want to see that scholarship again. So once you've gone through that list, you'll have a nice curated list of scholarships that are a good fit for you. At that point, I'm going to have you go back and do step 2. So you're going to go back to your profile. You're going to take out all of the information that you just put in, where we looked at everything everywhere all at once. And you are then going to just search for scholarships on one aspect of your identity, or one aspect of your accomplishments, or one aspect of your future plans at a time. And again, then you'll be able to save or heart or however each website works. So at the end, what we want is a nicely curated list of scholarships that are a good fit for you. Finding scholarships that are a good fit is sometimes the hardest part of applying for scholarships, and this is an area where a parent or a friend could really make a difference. If you are searching for scholarships and you come across a fantastic scholarship that is not right for you, but it is right for a friend or a classmate or an acquaintance or a cousin, please pass that information along. The way that we all get ahead is to help each other. So take your time with your scholarship search. This is the hardest piece of receiving scholarships, and be as organized as you possibly can, and also ask for help when you need it or if you get stuck. All right, work study is a wonderful type of financial aid, and you might see this on your financial aid offer. It might say, work study, and then it'll have a dollar amount like up to $3,000. What that means is that you will find a work study job. You will be paid for every hour that you put in at that job. And once you hit that $3,000 mark, or whatever your award amount is, then you have exhausted your eligibility for work study for that academic year. Now, work study is really wonderful, especially the first year or two in college. Those work study experiences tend to be on campus. They might not be the most glamorous jobs in the world. You might be, working in the cafeteria or answering email. I had a college roommate who wrote parking tickets. Not anybody's favorite work study job, but they're there and they're convenient. The real magic in work study comes when you're in the last few years of your program of study. At that point, you can take your work study eligibility and find positions off campus that are directly related to your major or your career plans. And that is when work study becomes magical, because you're getting paid. You're costing your employer a very small portion of your actual wages. You're getting to try on the job or the major. You're getting work experience, and you're building your network. So work study can be a really, really wonderful type of financial aid to receive. All right, remember when we defined financial aid as any time someone other than a family member gives you money to go to college. So even though federal student loans and student loans in general are nobody's favorite type of financial aid, they are considered financial aid. So let's look at this. As a 17 or 18-year-old student, you're going to have no credit history, really no job, and no collateral. And yet you will be offered federal student loans to help pay for your education. The federal student loans come in two different flavors, subsidized and unsubsidized. And as a first-year student, most of you will be offered a maximum of $5,500 in federal student loans. These will come through your college or university and are funded by the U.S. Department of Education. On the far right column, you can see that the interest rates are fixed. So whatever the interest rate is, the year that you borrow that student loan is the interest rate that will be associated with that loan until it's paid off. So if you were attending college during this current 24-25 academic year, your interest rate would be 6.53%. If you borrowed next year, it would be a different interest rate. So if you go to college for 4 or 5 years and you are borrowing a student loan every year you're there, you will end up having 4 or 5 different loans with 4 or 5 different interest rates. Now in the bottom row, you can see there's something called a Direct Plus loan. And within that program, there is a Parent Plus loan. Anybody who is a biological or adoptive parent of the student can apply for a parent loan. This is the parent is actually the borrower, borrowing money on behalf of the student. When the student leaves school, it's the parent's responsibility to pay that loan back. Again, there is a fixed interest rate. Currently, it's 9.08%, but that interest rate does change each year. I want to be really clear, just because your parent or parents have the opportunity and can borrow a parent loan doesn't mean that they have to, doesn't mean that they want to, and doesn't mean that they should. So that's a very personal choice that you and your parent will need to make together. We're going to move on to different types of financial aid applications. Here in Oregon, you will hear about 3 and maybe 4 different types of applications. First, we'll talk about the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. About 90% of our students complete this form. We'll also talk about the ORSA, or the Oregon Student Aid Application. Statewide, about 10% of our students complete this form. We'll talk about scholarship applications, which if I had my way, 100% of you would complete scholarship applications. And lastly, some of you will apply using a form called the CSS profile. So it's not the most common form, but it's out there, so we'll talk about it. The free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA, is the form created by the U.S. Department of Education, and it is used by students who are citizens or who are considered eligible non-citizens to apply for federal financial aid from the state of Oregon, and in many cases, financial aid from their colleges or universities themselves. So citizens use the FAFSA form. An eligible non-citizen, is someone who has what we colloquially call a green card. It could be somebody who has been granted asylee or refugee status. It could be somebody who is a citizen of the Confederated States of Micronesia, Palau, or the Marshall Islands. So lots of different students do qualify to complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA, we've had a little kerfluffle the past 2 years. It opened a little bit late this year. You will complete the FAFSA every year that you're in college. I want to be really clear that next year, in the fall of 2025, when you are applying for the 26-27 financial aid year, the FAFSA will open in October. So make sure that you kind of get that into your calendar and into your head. So this year FAFSA was delayed. Next year and every year after that, it will open in October. Now, we do have students here in Oregon who are undocumented students. They are not U.S. citizens. They're not eligible non-citizens, and they don't currently have a valid visa. So these students cannot complete the FAFSA, but the state of Oregon wants to be sure that we are supporting all of our undocumented students, and therefore the state of Oregon does provide funding through the Oregon Opportunity Grant, the Oregon Promise, and a bunch of other grant programs that undocumented students are eligible to receive. So you are a student who can't complete the FAFSA. You might be a student who completes the ORSA instead. And if you go to the link on this slide, you can see that we have a tool to help you figure out if you're going to complete the FAFSA or the ORSA. The ORSA, as of December 16th, was not quite open yet, but should open in the month of December 2024 so that students can complete it for the 2025-2026 academic year. And then next year, it should also open in October of 2025. The ORSA asks the same questions as the FAFSA. Like the FAFSA, you will complete it every year. And we use the same rubrics and calculations on ORSA data that we use on FAFSA data in order to determine a student's eligibility for financial aid. One of the oddest things about applying for financial aid is the definition of parent and determining which parent's information appears on your FAFSA or ORSA. For those of you who were able to attend the Beaver Lodge on the 16th, we had quite a few questions about this. We will run through the next 3 slides. We're going to describe this. And then we also have on the slide after this one a handy dandy link where you can go and figure out who your financial aid parents are. So financial aid parents, for those students who are in a very traditional two-parent or single-parent household, we have a couple questions that we run through. On the first column, we will ask, are the parents married to each other? And if they are, then you have two financial aid parents. Both will put information on the FAFSA or ORSA. If your parents aren't married to each other, we ask, are they living together? And again, this would be your biological or adoptive parents. So if they're not married but they live together, then you will report information from two parents on your FAFSA or ORSA. So if your parents aren't married to each other and they don't live together, then we go to that middle column. And what we want to know for purposes of financial aid is which parent provided the most financial support over the last 12 months. So we do not care who's claiming you on federal taxes. We do not care if there's a custody agreement or an agreement in place to pay for education after high school. The standard that we use for financial aid is which parent has provided the most financial support over the past 12 months. And once we figure out which parent that is, that parent becomes your financial aid parent, and your other parent is ignored on the FAFSA or the ORSA. So we've gone from students who are reporting two parents information to students who are selecting one parent to be their financial aid parent. Now, if that parent is not married, if they are, single, widowed, divorced, separated, then you're only going to put information from that parent on the FAFSA or ORSA. However, if that parent has remarried, and you now have a parent and a step parent, we're moving into column 3. You will report information from your parent and your step parent on the FAFSA or the ORSA. And I know that this feels a little bit counterintuitive to most of us, but that is the standard that FAFSA and therefore ORSA follow. Now, I worked through that prior slide pretty quickly, and it might feel as clear as mud. But if you go to studentaid.gov/FAFSA-apply/parents, there is actually a parent calculator online where you can go in, answer questions, and they will help you determine which parent or parents' information needs to appear on your FAFSA or ORSA. Not every student grows up in a very traditional Homer and Marge Simpson type of household. For students who are in foster care or who were in foster care at any point after their 13th birthday, those students are going to be considered independent, and they will file without any parent information at all. If a student has a legal guardian other than a parent or step-parent through the courts here in Oregon, so the state that you're living in, then that student will not have any parent information appear on the FAFSA or the ORSA. So if you have a foster parent or a legal guardian, you are considered an independent student and will only be collecting your information, not parent information. If you happen to have gotten married in the meantime, we would collect your information and your spouse's information and no parent information. Now, on the left-hand side of this image, we do have students that are living with a sibling, a grandparent, other extended family, a widowed step-parent who never adopted the student. In this case, those people are acting as a parent, acting as a guardian. But if they do not have legal guardianship of you, they will not be your financial aid parents. So if you're in this situation, please feel free to talk to the counselors at Beaverton High School, to stop by the College and Career Center, or I will give you my contact information at the end of this video. Any of us can help you figure out whose information you need to put on your FAFSA or ORSA. For those of you who are completing a FAFSA, you will need to create a username and password in order to log into the form. This is officially called a Federal Student Aid ID, an FSA ID, or a studentaid.gov ID. Despite the fancy name, it is a username and password. Students, you absolutely need to have an FSA ID. If somebody else's information will appear on your FAFSA, we call them a contributor, and that could be a parent, it could be a step parent, it could be a spouse if you have one. That other person whose information appears on your FAFSA will also need to have an FSA ID. So you could be in a situation where you have an FSA ID, parent 1 has an FSA ID, and perhaps parent 2 has an FSA ID. These usernames and passwords are unique to each individual. We use them to complete the FAFSA. We will use them to apply for federal student loans. And what we will be doing is we will take the information that you're putting in as you apply for this username and password account, and we will verify it against the Social Security database. Because we are verifying with the Social Security database, it's really important to get a copy of your Social Security card, look at it, make sure that you are putting in your Social Security number correctly, make sure you're putting in your birth date correctly, and then really look at how your name is displayed on that card. If the information that you put into your FSA ID application does not exactly match, in about 3 days, you'll get an email back that says you were not successfully matched with the Social Security database. This doesn't necessarily mean that you are not who you think you are. It could be that Social Security's idea of what your name is different than your own. For example, I have 2 last names, but Social Security feels that I have only 1 last name. So they think I have a first name, a middle name, a second middle name, and a last name. So when I go to create my FSA ID and I put in both of my middle name or both of my last names, I don't match. Last week I was out at McDaniel High School and I had 2 students who had recently come to the US from Vietnam, and on their Social Security cards were 3 names, but those names, the order that they appeared on the card was middle name, first name, last name. So when the students had put in their names the way that they used them, they had come back as a no match. So be really careful that you're matching what is on your Social Security card as you create your FSA ID. And again, if you run into problems, that's why we have the College and Career Center, and that's why we have counselors for you. Once you have your FSA ID, you as a student will log in and start your FAFSA. We're going to ask you about any unusual circumstances that you might have. We'll collect some demographic information from you above and beyond what you had to provide to create your FSA ID. We'll ask if we can connect with the IRS to pull down data from the taxes that you may or may not have filed in 2023. We'll ask you to list up to 20 colleges or universities, and you don't have to have applied to them or even be admitted to them. These are just colleges and universities that you're interested in. And then we will ask for your signature. Now, partway through this process, we're going to stop, and if we need to collect parent information, we're going to ask you to invite your parent to the form. In order to invite your parent to the form, you will need to know your parent's legal name, their birth date, their email, and if they have a Social Security number, you'll need to provide that as well. Once you provide that information, an email will be sent to your parent, inviting them to help complete your FAFSA, and then you will complete the process and sign. Your parent will log in, complete the process and sign, and your FAFSA will be submitted. For ORSA students, you will complete the entire application first, and then once you have completed your portion, then you will invite your parent to complete the ORSA on your behalf. So the invitation happens at different times on the different forms, but ultimately both the student and parent or parents will log into the form, complete the form, and sign the form. When your parent logs into the form, they will be asked demographic information of their own. They'll be asked information about their income in 2023. They might be asked questions about certain types of assets as of the day they're completing the form, and then they will sign and submit the form. There are about 200 colleges and universities in the United States that do require additional financial information that is not collected on the FAFSA or the ORSA before they can give out their own financial aid. So if you are applying to one of these colleges or universities, you'll need to complete a form called the CSS profile. This form asks all of the same questions that you are asked on the FAFSA or the ORSA, and then it will ask additional questions that help these financial aid offices do the best job they can in distributing the financial aid that they have available to them through their institution. It's not a hard form per se, but it is a long form. If you find that you are applying to one of these colleges, you will need to fill it in. You would not fill this form in if you didn't need to. And if you need assistance filling this form in, again, we've got the College and Career Center at Beaverton High School. We've got your counselors at Beaverton High School. And then you also have me through the College Place, Oregon. Any of us would be happy to help you. OSAC is a state agency here in Oregon. It stands for the Office of Student Access and Completion. This is their student portal. We talked about the Oregon Promise Grant. This is the portal where you will create a username and password. You will log in and you will complete that Oregon Promise Grant. We also have, and this is very unique to Oregon, a scholarship application through this portal. And that scholarship application is used by more than 600 scholarships statewide. You fill in the application one time each year. So you'll fill in the application, you'll answer a few questions, and then you will select which scholarships should receive your information. So it's a really wonderful, easy way to apply for scholarships here in the state. So I would hope that all of you would complete the scholarship application. If you're looking to become a teacher, if you're in the National Guard, if you're a member of one of Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribes, if you're a parent yourself and have kids that are going to be depending on you while you're in school, there are additional grants available through this portal for students in those situations. All right, our time together was very, very short. And I know that you might have questions, and you might have questions that you didn't want to ask in front of the entire senior class. So students, if you have questions, please feel free to use this bit.ly or this QR code. There is a form there that you'll fill in. Once you fill that in, it will give me permission to text you. And then, because I know that you would rather text me than do anything else. So this way we won't have to email, but you can email or text me here. We'll get your questions answered. I'm happy to help, and I am around all summer long. So as your counselors go out of contract and you find you've got questions before you start college, I will be your gal. Now, parents, I know that you are my age or a little bit younger, and texting might not be your thing. I know for me, I've got really fat thumbs. It makes it hard. So if you would like to ask me questions as a parent, the easiest way to do that is to email me at jsatalino, S-A-T-A-L-I-N-O, at ecmc.org. I try to be very, very responsive to emails, and we'll get back to you just as soon as I can. But please feel free to make use of us. Again, I'm with ECMC's, the College Place, Oregon. All of the services that we provide are free of charge. I've been in the financial aid profession since 1989. If I don't know the answer to your question, I will tell you I don't know the answer, but I will find out. So please feel free to use the resources both at Beaverton High School and out here in the community. Thank you so much for listening to this video, and good luck.